Hi guys, welcome back to Gwayne Sailing. The Exumas were our favorite area of the Bahamas that we've visited so far. The water here is so clear, it looks like the bottom of a swimming pool. Everything is so pretty that it looks fake, like you're on a movie set or a Disney World. There are over 300 keys in the Exumas, and in the middle of them, here in green, is the 22-mile-long land and sea park. This is a no-take zone, which means that you cannot collect shells or fish in order to help keep the water and the islands pristine. We were only able to visit a handful of the islands during our time here, as you can see by our route shown in black on the map. Most of the water here in the Exumas is very shallow, which makes for beautiful colors. But we have to navigate visually very carefully to ensure that we don't hit any shallow rocks or coral. Our first stop was at Norman's Key, which is a famous spot for snorkeling on a sunken airplane. This remote island was once used as a main drug smuggling hub by Pablo Escobar. Wayne got out his drone and took some amazing pictures of our boat and our buddy boat, Uga Chaka, with John, Laura, and Ashley aboard. They also have a Lagoon 450, just like ours. We both anchored near the site of the plane wreck, and just as we were about to join the handful of other snorkelers, 15 to 20 power boats came barreling in with their music blaring to drop off hundreds of tourists on a day excursion. So we took our dinghies and explored the nearby tiny islands in the crystal clear bay that were surrounded by sandbars. We stopped to snorkel, collect shells, and enjoy the peace and quiet as sharks and stingrays swam around us. After the powerboats left, we headed over to the site to snorkel the mostly intact airplane with its wings sticking out of the water at low tide. It was fun to look through the windows as fish were swimming through them and all around in the cabin. That afternoon, Wayne and I headed over to McDuff's Resort and Restaurant for lunch. This was probably the most expensive meal that we had during our entire time in the Exumas. It's a very prestigious resort, but tourists can dine in their restaurant area. We secured the dinghy to shore and walked through their beautiful grounds for some drinks and a snack. Sunsets were amazing each night in the Exumas due to the Saharan dust cloud that was passing over the Bahamas this month. This is a normal occurrence most years in June and makes for beautiful sunsets as well as helps keep the rain away. We buddy boated further south into the land and sea park boundary for our first adventure. We took our dinghies down a very relaxing, lazy river filled with rays and turtles, and we're hoping to be able to play in a place called the Washing Machine, where the turbulent current creates a sort of water slide that you can ride out for a bit, until it dumps you on a sandbar and you can do it all over again. However, we got there at low tide and there was no washing machine action. But we weren't sad, because we had the amazing mile-long pristine beach all to ourselves. We knew that all of the excursion boats would come later in the day at high tide, and the place would be filled with hundreds of loud tourists. Wayne got out his drone and took a few pictures of the area from overhead to show how beautiful it is. You can see our two dinghies in the bottom right-hand corner of the turquoise green waters. We spent the rest of the afternoon walking on the beach, swimming, and snorkeling. We spent the days meeting new friends, like Mike and Linda and their two dogs, on their boat Changes and Attitudes. Wayne did boat projects during the day, including repairing the muffler, fixing a leak in our bathroom medicine cabinet, fixing a broken window screen, replacing a clutch and a starter solenoid. And we would watch the fish swimming at the back of our boat, like the smiling barracuda. The next day, we paid for an anchorage near the Land and Sea Park headquarters in Warderick Wells. The park's office is located on an island that overlooks a crescent-shaped sandbar that protects boats from bad weather in all directions. There are many hiking trails on the land and mooring balls out in the water for you to tie your dinghy to, so you can easily snorkel in the best coral areas. You can view a reconstructed skeleton of a 52-foot sperm whale on the beach. And the sign outside of the park's office informs visitors of what a poisonwood tree looks like and warns us to keep an eye out for these dangerous trees while on the island. The leaves, bark, and fruit will all cause an allergic reaction if touched. Once checked into the park, the 5 of us took a dinghy ride past Emerald Rock over to a secluded beach to explore the area. Then around the other side of the island to explore more beauty. Sharks and barracudas were always in the clear water, but we felt comfortable swimming since you could see them coming from far away. Each day at 4 p.m., people would gather on the beach in the shade to share stories, snacks, and drinks with fellow boaters as we watched the sun go down. Wayne and I headed south to Staniel Key the next day to pick up our friends, Don and Maritza, who flew into the tiny island airport. We parked our dinghy at the airport dock, which was located just across the only road in town, put their luggage in the dinghy, and headed for lunch at the Staniel Key Yacht Club. Outside the restaurant, people were feeding the sharks in the bay. We got back to the boat just in time for Don and Ritz's first Bohemian sunset. We spent the evening playing games and watched some fireworks coming from a nearby island. We spent the next few days relaxing. We rented a golf cart, and while we were exploring the island, we found a beautiful, secluded white sand beach. We got out to take some pictures and even found a geocache here. Temperatures were in the high 80s, so in the afternoons we would cool off in the turquoise water. We snorkeled at a place called Thunderball Grotto, which was featured in the 1965 James Bond movie. This cave system is bursting with marine life and bright coral and is illuminated by sunlight filtering into the cave from a hole in the rock ceiling. The current can be very strong in here sometimes, so there is a rope inside to hold on to if needed. We stocked up on provisions for the next week while in town at both the Pink and the Blue grocery stores, as they are known on Staniel Key. We loaded the bags onto the dinghy and headed back to the catamaran. The next day we went to Pig Beach, which is home of the famous swimming pigs who come out to greet boaters as they arrive. The friendly pigs will swim up to the boats, expecting a handout of fruits or vegetables, which they will eat out of your hands. The pigs and the sharks get along just fine here. Wayne walked up to the shore to look in the hut where all the little baby pigs were sleeping. After breakfast the next morning, we took the dinghy past a sunken yacht over to Black Point to go for a hike. We saw a neat gray-colored ray as we tied up to the dinghy dock and then headed to the post office to mail my mom a postcard. It was a short 1-mile walk to the blowhole and the rock arch, but the high temperatures and the lack of shade forced us to stop a few times to rest on our way. The wind and the tides were going in the wrong direction, so there was no water coming out of the blowhole when we arrived. But there is a beautiful view at the top of the Coral Hill. We walked a bit further along the ocean to see the pretty rock arch and took some fun pictures while we enjoyed the shade under the arch. On our way back to town, we passed a small cemetery and then enjoyed some much-deserved food and drinks at the Black Point Yacht Club with the Irvines. The next morning, we took 2 dinghies over to Iguana Beach, where huge iguanas greet you as you pull up to shore. As soon as you step out of the boat, the giant iguanas come out of the rocks and the bushes to see if you have a snack for them. They are expecting food, even though there are signs on the beach warning people not to feed them. We have heard reports of them crawling into dinghies or trying to climb up the tourists' legs to get to the food. We stayed in the boat for the first 5 minutes until someone was brave enough to go on land to take some close-up pictures of the iguanas. After 10 or 15 minutes, the iguanas realized we did not have any food for them and they left us alone. We spent the rest of the afternoon snorkeling and found tons of sand dollars here. And since we are not in the park anymore, we were able to keep them. On the way back to the boat, we made a stop at a nearby snorkel spot for Wayne to spear a lionfish with his Hawaiian sling. We brought it home to the boat and made ceviche with the lionfish that night, along with a wonderful charcuterie board. After dinner, we watched the sunset and saw another SpaceX or Starlink rocket launch right from our boat. The conditions were perfect the next morning as we sailed to our next destination in the Exumas. Here at Compass Key, we were able to walk up a little creek, which was as warm as bathwater, to an area called Rachel's Bath. This pool of water is created when the ocean surf crashes over a reef barrier, giving the look and feel of a jacuzzi as the water bubbles and foams just like you're in a hot tub. That afternoon, we took a dinghy ride over to the Compass Key Marina and looked at the luxurious multi-million-dollar yachts, and then drove around the island's backwater to enjoy the scenic beauty. Once the tide was low enough, we headed to some caves to explore inside them and snorkel the area. You're able to stand up on the rocks inside the caves to get a better look at the stalagmites and the stalactites. On the ride back to our boat, we saw another airplane that had crashed on shore and was very much intact. But this was a private island and we were not able to go on shore to get a closer look. Every afternoon, sharks, mostly nurse sharks, would stop by the back of our boat to say hi to us. They were very curious and would get close enough for us to reach down and pet the top of them. Wayne got some great close-up footage with his GoPro of this guy who had a fishing hook stuck in his mouth. And every evening at sunset, most boaters blow into their conch shells to signal the end of the day, but Wayne preferred to use his didgeridoo instead. We made our way back to the Land and Sea Park so that Don and Maritza could experience the beauty of the Exumas. We stopped at the Sea Aquarium in the park's boundaries on our way. This amazing snorkel area had gin-clear water and made you feel as if you were in an aquarium, swimming with thousands of beautiful tropical fish and colorful corals. We spent a while taking underwater pictures before heading back to join John, Ashley, and Laura at the park headquarters.
Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1.
This time, we secured our catamaran to a mooring ball in the protected Crescent Sandbar area, right in front of the park office. We spent the days kayaking and paddleboarding in the warm, clear waters in front of the whale bones and kept cool by swimming right off of our boat. On Don and Ritz's last night in the Bahamas, we invited the Irvines over for drinks and snacks to say goodbye before we had to sail back to the airport the next day. We stopped for one last happy hour at the Staniel Key Yacht Club and left an Elgin firefighter patch at the bar on their wall of patches. Bright and early the next morning, after Wayne helped to rescue a lost dinghy that had broken free from the boat next to us, we said goodbye to Don and Maritza when we dropped them off at the dinghy dock for their short walk across the street back to the airport. We had a blast with them, and hanging out with our friends really made us slow down and enjoy our time in the Exumas, instead of always trying to plan our next adventure. We made the quick 3-hour trip to Wardrick Wells Park headquarters so we could wait out a 3-day wind and rainstorm there, which was heading towards us later that night. Wayne and I made it back to the park just in time to enjoy the 4 o'clock happy hour with all of our other boater friends and cooled off in the water with drinks and snacks. I took a ride on my paddleboard over to Banshee Creek to enjoy the quiet and beauty before Wayne came to rescue me in the dinghy and pulled me back to our boat just before it started to downpour. The lightning storm in the bay that evening was amazing to watch from inside as we played cards with Laura and John and Ashley on their boat until the rain ended. However, we forgot to take the plug out of the dinghy, so we had to pump out all of the rainwater before we could drive back to our catamaran. It rained the next day as well, but we didn't mind since the fresh rain washed all of the salt water off of our boat. It also gave us time to work on more boat projects and to catch up on some TV shows that we had fallen behind on. When the rain ended, we went for a hike to the top of Boo Boo Hill to get some great views of the bay. We saw this pile of handmade driftwood signs that people created specifically to leave at the top of the hill. We didn't make one, but we still left our mark up there. We stopped to read a memorial plaque that was placed up there for a boater who had passed away a few years ago. We headed to Nassau with Uga Chaka and our new friends Kevin and Nicole on their boat called Tonic. Wayne caught another barracuda, making this his 4th or 5th one, but we threw each one back because they are not good eating. The resort complex of Atlantis came into view, and since neither of us had been here before, we were excited to explore the park's restaurants, bars, and casinos. After docking the catamaran at the Hotel Marina, we stopped for drinks and listened to a band playing Caribbean music with some very interesting instruments. The place was so massive that we really needed more than a day and a half to explore all of the property and wildlife areas, like the turtle pond, the shark lagoon, and this sawfish pool. Nassau was definitely a change in pace from the remote, uninhabited islands that we've been to during our last 4 weeks in the Bahamas, but we had a blast here as well. We watched a Junkanoo parade dance past us, and we even found a Bruce Springsteen cover band playing in the casino. We walked around the hotel's property in the morning before heading to the water park and riding on the not-so-lazy river. It had rapids and waterfalls in some portions, and it took a full 20 minutes to go around the entire river. There were areas to get out of the water and go on the many water slides along the route, including one that went through a shark tank. We spent the rest of the day walking around the resort complex and enjoying the amazing beauty that it had to offer. We ended the night with a great dinner with our friends and a fireworks show from our boat, where the boys had an after-dinner cigar. We left the next morning and headed to the Berry Islands for a quick overnight stop at Bonds Key. We were traveling with both Uga Chaka and Tonic and met for sundowners on Tonic's catamaran that evening, where we met another couple who was just returning from Grenada. Our 4 boats had the beautiful anchorage all to ourselves that night. We followed the Irvines further north to Freeport on Grand Bahama Island, where we stayed at a marina instead of anchoring. We enjoyed their facilities that included a restaurant and a much-needed swimming pool, with our high heat and the humidity that we've been having. We all went to the straw market to do some shopping and then grabbed some lunch and drinks. This was to be our last night in the Bahamas before crossing the Gulf Stream and heading back to West Palm Beach, Florida. But unfortunately, the next morning, the waves and wind and weather were too rough, so we did a quick 2.5-hour passage to West End. We pulled into the same anchorage that we stayed at on our first night in the Bahamas after crossing 5 weeks ago. We love this anchorage, and since the Irvines had not been here before, we took the dinghy out and explored all the waterways of the abandoned neighborhood. There used to be a Jack Tar resort here, but it's since been demolished. All that's left are fire hydrants, street signs, and electrical boxes waiting for houses to be built. But the plan was scrapped after the law was changed and foreigners were not allowed to buy property in the Bahamas. We had the quiet place all to ourselves, along with a gorgeous sunset here on our last night in the Bahamas. As we headed out at 6 a.m. the next day, a rainstorm passed near us, leaving a beautiful double rainbow for us to enjoy as we sailed back home to the United States. And then Wayne caught something other than a barracuda, his first yellowfin tuna. And of course, we left our mark in the Exumas, along with everyone else who's been there in the past. What a great adventure we had in the Bahamas. Stay tuned to Gwayne Sailing to see where our adventures take us next as we head north for hurricane season. If you are enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.